You have 5 seconds to terminate this tape.
What are you doing? Take that off!
The year is 1983, and a scientist straps on a headset that lets you experience someone else's thoughts, memories, and emotions. What starts as the ultimate technology breakthrough becomes a gateway to heaven, hell, and corporate conspiracy. This shouldn't end with audiences watching someone literally die on screen and experience the afterlife.
Clockwise rotation.
This definitely shouldn't be the film that killed Natalie Wood. MGM wanted the next science fiction blockbuster after Star Wars conquered theaters. What they got was Douglas Trumbull betting everything on brain recording technology that could let humans share experiences directly. Studios expected exciting adventure. Instead, they watched a movie where the main character dies halfway through and the surviving scientists have to decide whether watching her death recording will show them what happens after we die. When Christopher Walken's character, Michael, first tries the experimental headset, he doesn't just see his colleagues' memories. He feels everything she feels, thinks her thoughts, lives inside her consciousness. The film asked a question nobody in Hollywood was ready for. If we could record human experience and play it back, would that recording include the soul leaving the body? Brainstorm crashed and burned at the box office, derailed by real-world tragedy when Natalie Wood drowned during production. But Trumbull's obsession with consciousness recording technology predicted virtual reality, neural interfaces, and every modern debate about whether machines can capture human experience. The movie that Hollywood wanted to bury became the film that saw our future first. Douglas Trumbull had spent 20 years making other directors look like geniuses. He created the effects for 2001, A Space Odyssey, Close Encounters, and Blade Runner. Basically every visual masterpiece of science fiction cinema. But Trumbull was tired of being the wizard behind someone else's curtain. He wanted to make a movie about something that actually mattered. The concept came from a simple question. What if you could record human experience? Not just video and audio, but everything. Emotions, physical sensations, thoughts, memories. Trumbull wasn't thinking about entertainment. He was thinking about whether consciousness itself could be captured, stored, and transferred. He pitched Brainstorm to MGM as the next step in human evolution, disguised as a thriller. The studio heard new special effects from the guy who made Star Wars look real and opened their checkbooks. They gave him $15 million and expected space battles or alien encounters. What they got was philosophical meditation on consciousness, mortality, and corporate greed. The script by Robert Stitzel and Philip Frank Messina focused on two scientists, Michael and Karen, who invent a headset that records the wearer's complete sensory experience. Other people can replay these recordings and literally live inside someone else's consciousness. The technology is revolutionary, transformative, potentially dangerous. Where the story gets dark is when military contractors and corporate executives see the invention. They don't want to share human experience or advance consciousness research. They want to create weapons, manipulate minds, control populations. The scientists realize their breakthrough will be perverted into something monstrous. By 1981, Trumbull was filming with a cast headed by Christopher Walken and Natalie Wood, using experimental camera techniques to differentiate between normal reality and recorded experience. The recorded memories would be shot in Super Panavision 70mm, while regular scenes use standard 35mm. When characters put on the headset, the screen itself would expand, immersing audiences in the experience. Nobody realized they were making a movie that would be overshadowed by tragedy worse than anything in the script. Sometimes obsession with technology can't prepare you for human fragility. Christopher Walken landed the lead because Trumbull needed someone who could play genius scientist without seeming like typical Hollywood smart guy. Walken brought his signature intensity to Michael, the researcher obsessed with perfecting brain recording technology. His natural quirkiness made the character feel authentic rather than cliché. Natalie Wood played Karen, Michael's colleague and estranged wife who co-invented the technology. Wood was Hollywood royalty, a legitimate star who gave the project credibility. Her presence suggested this wasn't just another science fiction movie, but serious drama about consciousness and human connection. Louise Fletcher took the role of Lillian Reynolds, the corporate scientist whose fatal heart attack while wearing the recording device creates the film's central mystery. Fletcher, fresh off her Oscar-winning performance in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, brought gravitas to a character who literally dies and leaves behind a recording of her death experience. Cliff Robertson played the corporate villain, the executive who wants to weaponize the technology for military applications. Robertson understood that the best antagonists believe they're doing the right thing. His character wasn't evil, just pragmatic about turning scientific breakthrough into profitable weapons. The supporting cast featured character actors who made the laboratory environment feel authentic. These were working scientists, not movie caricatures. When they discussed the implications of recording human consciousness, the dialogue felt like actual scientific debate rather than exposition. But the production's real challenge was creating chemistry between Walken and Wood as estranged partners working together. Their characters had to feel like people who'd once been in love, grown apart, then reconnected through shared scientific passion. The personal drama had to match the technological stakes. Trumbull's challenge was showing what brain recordings would actually look like. These weren't just videos, they were complete sensory experiences including emotions, physical sensations, and subconscious thoughts. The solution required inventing visual language that had never existed in cinema. The breakthrough was the dual format approach. Regular scenes were filmed in standard 35mm, but when characters put on the headset to experience recordings, the image expanded to Super Panavision 70mm. The screen itself would physically grow, creating immersive experience that mirrored the technology being portrayed. This technical approach required two completely different camera systems running simultaneously. Crew members had to coordinate between formats, matching shots, and maintaining continuity while switching between aspect ratios. Every recorded memory sequence became a complex technical exercise. But the real innovation was how Trumbull visualized consciousness itself. The recorded experiences included visual distortions representing emotional states, colors intensifying during pleasure, images fragmenting during confusion, the world literally breaking apart during death. These weren't just pretty effects, but attempts to show what subjective experience looks like. The most controversial sequence showed Lillian's death recording. As her heart fails, viewers experience her consciousness detaching from physical reality, moving through abstract spaces that could represent the afterlife or simply brain shutdown. Trumbull worked with doctors and consciousness researchers to create imagery that felt scientifically plausible while remaining spiritually ambiguous. The practical effects team built functional headsets that looked like they could actually record brain activity. These weren't sleek props, but believable prototypes, bulky, covered in wires, clearly experimental. When actors wore them, audiences had to believe these devices could capture human consciousness. The laboratory environments required authentic scientific equipment mixed with futuristic technology that didn't exist yet. Production designers studied real consciousness research facilities, then extrapolated what brain recording devices might look like. Everything had to feel like it was 5 years away from reality rather than pure fantasy. They accomplished this technical revolution while dealing with tragedy that stopped production for months. The effects that were supposed to showcase breakthrough technology became symbols of how quickly everything can fall apart. November 29th, 1981. Natalie Wood drowned off Catalina Island during a weekend break from filming. The circumstances remained mysterious. Was it accident? Was there foul play? What exactly happened that night? The questions overshadowed everything else about Brainstorm. MGM executives immediately wanted to shut down production. Their star was dead, major scenes were incomplete, insurance wouldn't cover the losses. Trumbull faced the worst nightmare any director experiences. His movie had killed someone, even if accidentally, The guilt was crushing regardless of circumstances, but Trumbull refused to quit. He believed completing the film honored Wood's memory better than abandoning it. Using existing footage, body doubles, and careful editing, he reconstructed her remaining scenes. Some sequences were rewritten to work around her absence. Other scenes used footage shot before her death, carefully integrated into the narrative. The production limped forward through 1982, haunted by loss and uncertainty. Cast and crew worked in shadow of tragedy, never knowing if the movie would be completed or released. Every scene featuring Wood became emotionally loaded. Audiences would be watching someone who was gone. Christopher Walken pushed through despite personal devastation. He'd been friends with Wood, worked closely with her for months. Returning to set meant facing constant reminders of what happened. His performance in later scenes carries genuine grief that wasn't acting. MGM remained reluctant about releasing the finished film. They worried audiences would see Brainstorm as exploitation of Wood's death. The movie about recording human consciousness had become inseparable from questions about mortality, loss, and what remains after someone dies. Trumbull's obsession with consciousness and recording human experience had been overtaken by reality. The film about whether machines can capture souls premiered in a world that had just lost someone who would never be captured or recorded again. September 30th, 1983. Brainstorm finally opened after nearly 2 years of delays, rewrites, and legal battles. MGM gave it minimal marketing, unsure how to promote a movie shadowed by its star's death. Audiences who showed up didn't know whether they were watching science fiction thriller or memorial service. Opening weekend was brutal. Just $1.1 million against $15 million budget. The movie that cost careers and nearly destroyed Trumbull couldn't attract audiences even with curiosity about Natalie Wood's final performance. Word of mouth was confused rather than enthusiastic. Critics didn't know whether to review the film or discuss the tragedy. The Los Angeles Times called it ambitious but cold, noting that technical innovation couldn't compensate for emotional distance. Roger Ebert praised the concept while questioning execution. The movie asks profound questions about consciousness, but never quite answers them. Variety suggested that production troubles had fatally compromised whatever Trumbull originally intended. Total domestic gross barely cracked $10 million. International sales didn't help much. The movie about recording human experience couldn't connect with audiences who were too distracted by real-world loss. Brainstorm disappeared from theaters within weeks, dismissed as expensive failure that never recovered from tragedy. But the real damage was to Trumbull himself. The director who had visualized the future for other filmmakers couldn't survive the disaster of his own vision. MGM blamed him for the overruns, the delays, the inability to properly finish after Wood's death. His reputation as reliable effects genius was replaced by image of director who couldn't handle adversity. The film that predicted virtual reality, neural interfaces, and consciousness transfer became primarily remembered for what happened during production rather than what appeared on screen. Sometimes the worst disasters are the ones that prove your themes were right all along. Nobody wanted to see Brainstorm bombed because audiences in 1983 weren't ready to think about recording human consciousness. But watch the movie today and realize Trumbull predicted everything. Virtual reality headsets that immerse users in experiences? That's basically what Michael and Karen invented. Neural interfaces that capture brain activity? Elon Musk's Neuralink is attempting exactly that. The debate about whether machines can capture human consciousness? That's the central question of modern AI development. The film's corporate conspiracy angle became reality. When technology companies promise to enhance human experience while actually harvesting data and manipulating behavior, they're following the path Brainstorm warned about. The military weaponization subplot seemed paranoid in 1983. Today, we know governments worldwide research brain-computer interfaces for soldier enhancement and enemy manipulation. Most eerily, the film's central device, experiencing someone else's recorded memories, is exactly what social media has become. We scroll through other people's experiences, living vicariously through their documented moments, becoming addicted to consciousness that isn't ours. Trumbull predicted that technology would let us escape our own minds, and he was right about the dangers. The death recording sequence that seemed like morbid fantasy now resonates as people debate whether consciousness can be uploaded, whether we can achieve digital immortality, whether human experience can exist independent of biological bodies. The questions Brainstorm asked about mortality and technology have only become more urgent. So was Brainstorm too ahead of its time, or exactly the warning about consciousness technology that we needed but couldn't handle? What's your favorite film that predicted technology we're still trying to understand? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories about movies that failed by seeing the future too clearly.